I have seen more Asian Americans being upset at the fact that Black Americans are threatening to boycott Asian businesses than I have seen Asian Americans speaking out against the murder of Cyrus Carmick Belton, a child who was murdered at the hands of an Asian man. And this has everything to do with race, especially when anti blackness is so deeply rooted in our community. I have said this a million times and I'll say it as many times as I need to so you can get it through your thick skulls. The only reason why Asians exist in America in such a large population is because black activists fought for our right to be here during the civil rights movement. White people did not want us here. It's not enough for Asian people to just be not racist. You have to be anti-racist and you have to be speaking out against these injustices or else they'll continue to happen. We absolutely owe the black community solidarity, and the sooner that we realize that we're not much different from each other is the sooner that real change starts to happen.
I think one of the challenges is that a lot of people don't know history, and a lot of people in the Asian community don't know, or they ignore and reject, you know, what our ancestors and a lot of those who fought for civil rights did for not just for us but for others, and it is obvious that there's a lot of anti-blackness in this world. You know, it's gross. It's a lot I can say, but I want to let this next guy, share. I think he does a great job at explaining it, and then I'll give my last little bit 2 cents at the end.
Someone told me about this very disturbing TikTok trend in China. It feels painful to even describe it, but since I grew up there, I feel obligated to have a few words. So basically, a lot of people in China were filming themselves torturing these dolls that have dark skin. Not just any dolls, but specifically dolls with dark skin, which apparently sends a racist and sadistic message. It really pains me to talk about this. Maybe I could say something like not all Chinese, but it wouldn't mean much, because statistically, the Chinese population, including the immigrants outside China, are still, in general, pretty racist. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They just are. So I want to talk a little about why. Especially since most people in China never had a chance to see a black or brown person up close. Where does this behavior come from?
Right.
First, I want to say, just as in any country, racism is always highly correlated with ignorance. You need to understand, contrary to what many people may have told you, most parts of China are still highly undereducated. Pile on me if you want, but it's true. I mean, their education is okay in terms of math and science, but when it comes to humanities and social sciences, it's like non-existent. Maybe some top universities have some decent programs, but high schools and local colleges are basically in the Stone Age. There's no empirical political science at all. No sociology, no human geography, maybe some geography, but not human geo. There's history, but the content is highly selective. Almost everything in the history textbooks has something to do with glorifying the Chinese Communist Party, not much else. Literature, well, barely. The reading assignments in high schools are very boring, except maybe a few ancient pieces, and very few translated articles from other countries. So basically, students are not supposed to understand people and societies. They're trained about everything else, but not human beings. Because this way, the ruling party has an easier time telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And that ignorance also infected the Chinese immigrants in other countries because they are mostly STEM majors. They not only don't know social sciences, they kind of look down on social sciences. Some of them think political science is pseudoscience because the data are not as neat as in a chemistry experiment. Well, that'd be another topic. But basically, ignorance in how the human world works is always a big risk factor for racism.
Absolutely.
The second explanation, the cult of money in China affects the psychology toward race. I mean, of course, Americans love money too, But compared to how much Chinese love money, you guys are like amateurs. China literally has a god called Caishen, which means god of money. I don't know any such god in other cultures, but Caishen is a big deal in China. It's actually worshipped by Chinese of different beliefs, like Buddhists, Taoists, and some other local paganists, even atheists. They all sort of worship the god of money. This money cult was especially explosive in the last half century because China was in this transition from the Maoist version of hungry communism to a net-breaking extreme of capitalism. So 2 generations of Chinese were basically rediscovering economic competition, and they just went crazy. There's not a family or friend gathering in China where people don't talk about money.
Wow.
So of course, race is also incorporated into that monetary value system.
Yep.
White people have more money, so they must be a higher race.
Mm-hmm.
About 20 years ago,
The level
my
of
wife was
ignorance.
having a business lunch with some white guys in Shanghai. And guess what? The receptionist of the restaurant tried to stop her from entering. He just basically asserted himself between the white guys and my wife and blocked her. She had no idea what was going on. Maybe the guy thought she was pretending to be a part of the group, or maybe he thought she was trying to hit on one of the white guys. But either way, you are not their bodyguards. Why do you care? Before she could figure out what happened, one of the white guys turned back and shouted at the receptionist and made him back off. You know, like a tough colonizer in those movies. Pretty funny. And of course, that money-based racism affects Chinese people's attitude toward black people.
Yep,
They use race as a
that's the point I want to get to, but I'll let him finish it out.
proxy to decide who can be a source of revenue.
Yes.
A lot of Chinese disrespect black people because they don't see a swell pocket.
Yes.
You can see this in the United States too, right? Even the most racist motherfuckers would pretend to be polite in front of rich black people, right? I bet you'll see a lot of crazy Chinese fans too if some NBA teams visit China.
Mm-hmm.
So part of racism is really just classism. Okay, my third point. Some of these racist video trends may have been the Chinese government's strategy.
Well,
I don't have any evidence.
that's the meat and potatoes of what he shares a lot of good stuff. His TikTok is, right there. Dr. Huey Lee, if you want to go check out the rest of the video, you can. But I just wanted to paint this picture out with everything going on with the Cyrus Belton, outcome or verdict. It's a lot of conversation happening. I wanted to make sure we have this conversation. I've done some other content on it as well, but the point is that this racism exists, this classism exists, this I'll treat you a certain way if you have money, it exists. And it's one of the reasons why I've told my friends, like, there's certain pockets of businesses I don't go into because I don't like how I'm treated. I don't like how I'm looked at. I don't like how, I'm served, in comparison to others. And I got to a point to where it's like, okay, I'm not chasing every rabbit. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to call it out every time. I'll just remove myself. If I believe I need to call it out, I will. But there are times where I'm just like, this is not something I want to deal with, and I can just go somewhere else. Not that it's right for people to, treat people a certain way, but I like my peace, and I try to let my dollar and my decisions, speak powerfully and make impact, rather than going back and forth and looking like a fool with a fool. By going back and forth with them, I'll just let my money do the talking and just avoid that business, or just avoid like supporting those type of, establishments altogether. But I think it's great for conversation. I think I really appreciate when people are honest about their upbringing and the things that are said about black people. because it's true. They're immigrants. I talked to a man sometime last year. He was telling me about how before he moved to the country, his parents told him not to be around black people. Said all these bad things about us. Had never been to the States. And it's just sad. It's just sad because, you know, it's an ongoing thing. But what happened to Cyrus Belton just really, gave room for more conversation that need to be had. I hate what happened to him. Rick Chow was definitely guilty of murder, but, we have to figure out a way to move the conversation forward, to move society forward, to move the needle forward in ways that, will bring change. And hopefully some of this conversation does that. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Connect with us online at www.there'shopebrand.com. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe. I'll catch y'all in the next video.